All right, so we've got this new report out that The Legend of Zelda is being adapted into a movie, just like the Super Mario Bros. Game series was recently adapted into a film that's been highly successful. So Nintendo, of course, probably wants to grab onto the opportunity to adapt another one of their very popular franchises, The Legend of Zelda. This is something that I think a lot of people saw coming, and I'm excited about it, though I don't know the game franchise nearly as well. I've played a couple of the games, didn't get very far in any of them because I'm not very good at those games, but there is something that I'm seeing here from Screen Rant. Well, I saw it earlier today, and it's something that I wanted to talk about because there was a list of 10 reasons why the Legend of Zelda movie might be harder to adapt for the screen than the Super Mario Bros. Movie was, and I mostly agree with that list. I had a few disagreements, and there's one I want to focus on in particular, and that's that the Legend of Zelda movie is going to be animated. And the writers at Screen Rant, whoever wrote this article at Screen Rant, thinks that this is a weakness that the film will have, a disadvantage that the film will have going into it. And I want to talk about why I just don't agree with that. So, Mario, of course, was animated, and it suited that style of game very well, going off of the more recent Mario releases, such as Super Mario Bros. Wii, New Super Mario Bros., and things like Super Mario Galaxy, Super Mario 3D World. Those were very well represented in the film with the style they chose. But this article says that The Legend of Zelda really should be live action because it's mostly fantasy, most of the characters are human, and it doesn't have as many whimsical fiction elements as Mario does. And I simply don't agree with that because I think that animation actually gives filmmakers much more creativity than live action does. I mean, it's true we've got things like Lord of the Rings that showcase how much fantasy can really work well in live action, but no matter what you do with live action, unless you're doing mostly green screen, it's just never going to be the same as a fully animated, fleshed out world can be, with what you can do with conveying magic and scale and size and lots of colorful elements. It's just the best CGI and the best green screen compositing is just not going to be nearly as free as animation is going to be. I would go a step further and say that I think The Legend of Zelda should actually be 2D animated. I think I would like to see the return of 2D animated films, like those classic Disney films with what they did with fantasy. Imagine if the Legend of Zelda film was basically as whimsical and magical as something like Peter Pan, The Sword and the Stone, Sleeping Beauty, something like that. Something that uses not necessarily hardline 3D models with very defined shapes, but uses strokes of the pen to communicate magical ideas and color and emotion and feeling, the way that 3D animation really just can't. I mean, we've had some very good examples of extreme beauty in 3D animation, but going back to those classic Disney films where you could do all kinds of crazy things with the hues and the magic. I mean, think about the magical elements of Beauty and the Beast, for example, toward the end of that film. You just never really see that kind of thing recreated in 3D animation and film. I mean, you do in video games, but usually 3D animated films don't get that crazy with it. I guess maybe this is more of a case of maybe no one's done it nearly as well. Maybe in 3D animation these things could be replicated, but I like the freedom of not necessarily having to draw every single frame and every single scene to the same scale, being able to play with that and being able to have much more fluid styling in your animation to convey these things. And I think The Legend of Zelda, being a return to that kind of film, could be absolutely amazing. And I want to make one more point here, because actually this article did say that the Screen Rant article, rather, did say that one of the things that's almost certain about this film is that it won't make as much money as the Super Mario Bros. Film will, because of recognition of the brand not being as strong with Legend of Zelda as it is with Mario. And I can see that point. I think it definitely is at a huge disadvantage when it comes to Mario. But if you had a film which recreated that classic Disney magic, and this is Universal, this is not Disney, but I think most people know what I'm talking about when I'm mentioning that classic Disney magic. If this film was able to recreate that, and it spread by word of mouth, kind of like Frozen did. Frozen, if you remember, was an IP with no recognition, really. I mean, there were some people knew it was based off of a more classic story, but most people didn't, right? Most people did not know what Frozen was. It traveled word of mouth, basically, and it became a huge film. Imagine if Legend of Zelda did that, and it did that with the brand recognition that Zelda already has. You could absolutely make more than Mario with this movie. I know that people, when they write reviews, they like to be realistic. They don't like to be wrong later. They don't like to be pointed to and mocked by people saying, see how wrong you were about this. But I don't like this kind of narrow-mindedness when it comes to films. Every film is not going to be as successful as it is until it is, right? There are so many things that people thought would never work, and there were people who said that having Chris Pratt voice Mario and not having him do that stereotypical Italian accent that Mario does, that the film would not work because it would be too different or it would be too weird. But then look what happened with Mario. And this is the same thing here. And I guess while we're on this topic, I will go ahead and mention the last thing. I didn't mean to mention all three things that I took issue with in that article. But while we're on the topic, Link speaking is something that they said is a disadvantage. And I do actually agree that this is a disadvantage because, unlike Mario, Link has really never spoken in the games. Even though Mario didn't speak in complete sentences, he did at least speak. He was established to be a speaking character, and Link is not. If they're going to make Link a speaking character, again, it is a change. They are going to have to contend with the fans' expectations. But if they make it work in a way which is pleasing to people, I think it can actually be something which people don't even think about anymore. They say, oh, of course, well, Link was always going to speak and it was always going to work. If it does work. And of course, if he speaks and it doesn't work, people might say, oh, that was never going to work, right? So it's just that kind of narrow-minded thinking when it comes to what movies are and are not going to do, you know. And think about all these films that were guaranteed to be a slam dunk success, and they weren't. They ended up bombing. So again, if there's a good creative team behind this that can really bring this home and make it something special, not really doing that same kind of humor that Mario did. Again, I love the Mario movie, but the very, very self-aware, subversive humor that the Mario movie is guilty of is not something I really enjoyed myself. So I think Zelda, if they can make that more serious, more high fantasy, more whimsical, more emotional film, and they do it very beautifully, and they find a good voice actor, if they do those things, this film will absolutely work, and I think it could make more than Mario. That's my thoughts on this. Leave your thoughts down below, guys. Thank you very much, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.